Hello there friends and welcome! Today we have a return to BG3 guides with at long last a Circle of the Land Druid build, which is actually one of the strongest, most versatile spellcasters in the whole game. As through your most unique ability, you'll get to constantly acquire new spells on every new spell level, including ones from classes you wouldn't get otherwise like Sorcerer and Wizard. This way, you'll get to combine the best offensive spell power through highly damaging area of effect spells, capable of even higher than 100 later on per turn, followed by amazing crowd control potential as well, with even up to 30 spell DC to ensure your spells will always work. Because this will all be added on top of your already powerful Druid spellbook and class features, you'll still retain access to some of the best summons in the game, plus of course the ability to wild shape into all the best forms. So without further ado, let us get into our Circle of the Land Druid build, first with character creation. When it comes to race, Druid is one of the very specific cases where I think the Drow race really shines, as it provides you with free hand crossbow proficiency, the best ranged weapon because it can be dual wielded, and gives you something to do when, well, you wanna save your spell slots, especially useful for the early parts of the game. The thing is, by default, the Druid class has very poor weapon proficiencies. With Drow we can overcome that, especially for ranged weapons. This isn't exactly necessary however, because starting from around level 5 or so, you'll have more than enough spell slots to last you whole battles and dungeons. And you can always rely on the cantrips as well, so feel free to go with whatever race you want. Speaking about cantrips, ideally the damage dealing ones, but if you don't have another character that can cast guidance, it's always a must-have. Then my preferred pick is Produce Flame for the ranged option, but later you'll have space for all the most important cantrips. For your ability scores, it's pretty simple. Wisdom is your most important stat, so assign a +2 to it. Then you'll wanna start with 17. Followed by a +1 to Dexterity and 16 right at character creation. It's great if you're going with hand crossbows, but most importantly, for high initiative. Any spellcaster always wanna act before the enemies, of course. Then just 14 Constitution for the classic boost to hit points, and the remaining points can be spent anywhere else, either Strength for higher carrying capacity, or Charisma for better dialogue checks if you want as the main character. Speaking about skills, pick the classic Guild Artisan background, especially for Insight and Persuasion as proficiency skills. Then for your actual skills, go with the ones based on Wisdom because it is your best stat. We already have Insight from our background, which is amazing because there are plenty of Insight checks in this game, followed by Perception from Race, also high in demand. Then you can go with, for example, Survival and Medicine or Animal Handling. There aren't that many Animal Handling checks though, but I guess the same is true for Medicine. Right at the second level we can already select our Circle of the Land subclass. As I mentioned before, you'll still retain access to all the wild shape forms at full scaling, it's just that you cannot cast spells under them. Plus your first unique Circle of the Land feature, Natural Recovery. This works kinda the same as the Sorcerer and Wizard ability that lets you restore spell slots through natural recovery charges. Better for lower level spells as they cost less to restore. At the next level however is when we'll start getting our unique spell selection. For another cantrip, go with anything you want, including Poison Spray or Thorn Whip. Level 3 means our unique Druid spells, based on a different type of land. Ideally, you wanna focus on spells that you can't get otherwise as a Druid. For example, the best pick here is definitely Coast, to provide you with both Mirror Image and Misty Step, amazing for utility and defenses. And by default, these are Wizard and Sorcerer only spells. If, however, you pick a spell selection with spells you already have as a Druid by default, like Arctic for Hold Person and Spike Growth, the main difference is regardless, the spells will always be prepared, so you won't need to individually prepare Hold Person and Spike Growth anymore. This advantage doesn't matter that much because as a full Druid caster, you will have more than enough spell slots to prepare spells. So anyways, be sure to go with Coast early on. For level 4, any cantrip you want, followed by our first feat. As usual for spellcasters, my preferred pick is without a doubt Alert, a must-have, especially on Honor mode where you have permadeath. After all, the huge bonus to initiative when combined with your already high dexterity means you will 100% of the time act before enemies, which of course puts you at a massive tactical advantage, plus the ability to be immune to surprise and ambushes. But if you'd prefer, you can already go with ability improvement and maximize your wisdom. I'd much rather Alert, however. At level 5, and whenever you unlock new spell levels, so 7, 9, and 11, you'll get more Circle of the Land spell choices. The best part about this is that you will not be restricted to the land type you picked before, so you can mix and match them. And my preferred pick now is Desert, as it provides you with the Hypnotic Pattern spell, one of the best ones for crowd control. Something druids are rather lacking because by default, they mostly have Hold Person, which only becomes good way later as you get more spell levels to upcast it for more targets. Hypnotic Pattern, on the other hand, always hits a huge area, so the entire enemy pack. If you want access to the Haste spell, you can also go with something like Grassland or Arctic. Haste, of course, is as always amazing, but for this type of character, I'd rather spend my concentration in something else, as you can always rely on potions that can even hit multiple characters at once, unlike the normal spell. Level 6 just means more spell slots, but you also get immunity to difficult terrain, and most importantly, some of the best wild shape forms, Panther for its infinite invisibility ability, and Owlbear for the huge amount of strength and damage. Level 7 means more Circle of the Land unique spells, and well, if you really want something unique, you might as well pick Underdark here, because it provides you with greater invisibility. It's just that, just like with Haste, you might prefer to spend your concentration into something else. So you might as well go with something like Arctic, as it will provide you with Conjure Minor Elemental and Ice Storm, which will always be prepared, and these are amazing spells, even if you already have them as a druid. Level 8 means another feat, and now it's time to increase our Wisdom to the max, for the highest spell DC and damage possible. For our unique level 9 spells, you have a few options here. I really enjoy Arctic because it provides you with Cone of Cold, which can deal quite a lot of damage if you apply the wet debuff to enemies first, as it's cold based. You can always just rely on Call Lightning instead, so something else you can pick is Underdark or Swamp if you really like the Cloud Kill spell, which can be good enough, assuming you want to focus into poison damage. At level 10 plus, you can either keep this character a full druid, which is what I prefer, or multi-class into something like Fighter. Only for Action Surge for one more action, but I find that a bit overkill. Especially because level 10 for a druid means 3 entire attacks per action, under Wild Shape only, something only fighters would get. And well, I'd much rather have more and more spell slots and spell levels for more powerful spells. Any other cantrip, including Shillelagh. And for level 11, we at long last have our level 6 spells. Sadly, we don't get new Circle of the Land ones at this point. But they are still good enough, especially because you can upcast powerful earlier spells like Conjure Elemental for the best summon in the game, followed by Call Lightning for more damage, even Hold Person for CC, or Ice Storm. By remaining a pure druid, we also have our last feat at 12, and my preferred pick here for most spellcasters is amusingly enough Dual Wielder. This does let you dual wield staffs, and at this point in the game, Chapter 3, you will already have access to the best staffs in the game for extra spellcasts of any spell level, including level 6 ones, And of course, the highest bonus to spell DC possible. Now let us cover gear for our Circle of the Land Druid, and it's the usual package for spellcasters. So for the helmet slot, Shade Spell Circlet for Act 1, then in the second act you can replace it for Fistbreaker Helm, ultimately the Hood of the Weave. Cloaks don't really matter outside of the Cloak of the Weave, which is Act 3 only. As far as armor, for Act 1 the classic Proctity Sparkswell robes for higher save DC. You can replace it for the robe of Exquisite Focus in Act 2, but the effect is pretty much the same. But ultimately, because druids can wear up to medium armor, either the armor of the Spore Keeper, even if you won't really benefit from the Spore Sacks property as you aren't a Spore Druid, or the armor of Landfall, both are very druid thematic and will increase your spell save DC. For gloves, you might as well go for Missile Snaring early on to prevent enemy range damage, but ultimately just the classic Helldusk gloves for the highest spell save DC bonus. Boots don't really matter for this character, you can go with Disintegrating Nightwalkers as usual for Misty Step, but you do have that as a Circle of the Land Druid as a normal spell. For amulets, early on you just want to focus on the ones that grant you spell restoration, for example, the Pearl of Power amulet, which lets you restore up to a level 3 spell slot, amazing for the Call Lightning spell, also Hypnotic Pattern. Later you also have Spellcrux for any spell of any level, and ultimately of course the Amulet of the Devout during Act 3 for the highest spell save bonus. For rings there isn't really anything important during Act 1, but Act 2 is when the fun stuff starts appearing. With first the Callous Glow ring to highly increase your spell damage, amazing for Ice Storm because it procs multiple times per cast, followed by the Ring of Feywild Sparks at Act 3. While it's not stated here, this ring does actually increase your spell save DC by a +1. Now let us cover weapons and quick slots. For Act 1 and also the second chapter, go with either Spell Sparkler if you want higher cantrip damage, or Melv's First Staff for higher spell DC, which is the one I prefer. Ultimately during Act 3, you can actually dual wield the most powerful staffs, so go with the legendary staff Marco Hashkir. And be sure to use the Karaska's Favor ability for either higher electricity or cold damage depending on what you want. Dual wielded with the Staff of Spell Power, this way you have double bonuses to spell save DC and also double arcane battery uses for essentially 2 free spellcasts of any level. For ranged weapons, if you went with the Drow Race, but even if you didn't, you can still go with dual hand crossbows. It's just that by virtue of not being proficient, you'll have less attack rolls. Or most importantly, if you don't care about attacking with crossbows, the Bow of Awareness during Act 1 and the second chapter for +1 initiative, and ultimately the Hell Rider Longbow for triple that initiative bonus. For consumables, it's pretty simple, either Bloodlust, if you want to cast the biggest amount of spells per turn, essentially 3 Call Lightnings for example, when hasted, or the Elixir of Battle Mage's Power, for the highest bonus to spell save DC, which is why we have up to 30. Well, alright friends, so this was it for our Circle of the Land Druid build. If you found this guide useful, please remember to like, subscribe, and also consider becoming a channel member if you can. Also, feel free to request any other builds in the comments section. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.